This is the review for Melding Universe Teridax. Built between the years 2008 and 2009, it was designed by BZ Power member Tom McCone. Now, this isn't the Teridax we got to see for the decade run of Bionicle. This Teridax hails from the Melded Universe, an alternate reality where, when the Cold War began, the Great Beings built the Matoran species to contain the energized protodermis that leaked from the planet's core. After 5 years of the effort, the Toa were successfully able to meld the planet back together. Now, the Melded Universe works backwards than the Prime Universe that we are used to. Whereas the Matoran are not referred to as Matoran. They're actually the Toa. And the Toa are referred to as the villagers, or the Matoran. So, this is because the Matoran were able to fit into the cracks and crevices of Spherus Magna, allowing them to capture the energized protodermis, whereas the Toa were just too big. The Matoran were also outfitted with elemental powers and mask powers to aid them in collecting the energized protodermis. Continuing the trend of being completely backwards, the Makuta of the Melded Universe are beings of light, where they train themselves to expel their inner darkness. Because of this, the Melded Universe Makuta cannot create shadow hands. As well, some of the Krata they create have also been changed. They cannot create shadow Krata, and Krata of darkness, fear, and anger have been replaced by telekinesis, courage, and peace. Lastly, the Melded Makuta are clad in primarily white armor to represent their dedication to the light and serving the Toa. Teridax here was first introduced in the Brothers in Arms story serial, where after Mazika and Voltraz were transported across dimensions, they ran into Maku, who would take them to the Matoran-inhabited village of Gakoro, where she would later introduce them to Teridax. Teridax would join Mazika upon request to repair the damage that the Prime Teridax was causing. Once in the Prime Universe, they were attacked by the Prime Teridax, who sent some Shadow Takanuva clones, which were quickly dispatched. Later, once Prime Teridax was killed by Madanui, Mazika and Melding Universe Teridax would migrate out of the Great Spirit robot. Taking a look at this model, he has a very immediate presence. Every part of this guy flows into the next, and it really makes him feel organic. This is kind of to be attributed to the very prominent amount of white pieces, as well as some well-placed dark gold and silver. And when it comes together, it almost feels like it's not even Lego, more like a high-end collector action figure. So, articulation-wise, this guy is fairly well articulated. So, bringing him in for a closer look, and of course, backing up and focusing. There it is. So, the feet can move forward that much, and back that much. Nothing too little, but nothing too much. So, you get the kind of range of movement you need for this figure. You can also get a bit of a rotation. It's not too much though, the tubes kind of pull on things, so you can't really get too much farther than that, or that. At the knee, you can get it completely straight. You can get just shy of 45 degrees. If you remove this Anika shoulder pad, you can get just shy of 90 degrees, which, depending on what pose you want, I think that's pretty good. Unfortunately, though, it does leave a big gaping hole at the back of the leg, so to each his own. And the foot fell off. Look at that. At the hips, the legs can kick forward that far, can go back about that far, and then in terms of splits, his legs can move out that far. So you got a decent range of motion into the legs, which is pretty good. So at the waist, there is a ball joint in there. So that means, once I get it reconnected, that means you get an ab crunch. You can get this backward movement. I don't know how that's translating to camera. And you also get a waist swivel, which is very reminiscent of the 03 version. There we go. So it goes about that far before it starts running into things. At the arms, these hand pieces are connected differently than you'd see on some Titans, such as Teridax, Kitongu, where these ones are on an angle, whereas the ones I mentioned are usually facing forward and back. So, though it works pretty well. So, forward, you get all the way forward. Probably do it from that side. There we go. Backward, you only can get that far back before it starts running into things. It's not that impressive. Outward, you can go all the way outward. Definitely an upgrade from like Teridax and Kitongu. It can come in, forward. Rotating it gives you a little more motion in terms of forward. Just above the elbow, you have this ball joint where this tube connects, allowing you to adjust the tube however you wish, and it gives you a lot more freedom in terms of this tube, and it doesn't hinder articulation whatsoever. At the elbow, we have a ball joint, which is not a hinged ball joint, so it can rotate and bend just shy of 90 degrees. And then at the hand, we have another ball joint, so again, it can rotate and bend. Both arms and legs are exactly the same, so there's nothing to show different on the other side. And then at the head, we have the same connection as on 03 Teridax, and this back plate fell off. And so he can look up that far, look down that far, side to sideways. He can look that far and that far, and he also has a head tilt, though doing that may cause the head block to run into this handpiece and might pop it off. And that back plate fell off again. What do you know? If you turn the head around for that reverse mask, you get that far before it starts to pop off. I can look up to a great degree. Can't really look down just because of these chin sections and the Roxy backplate colliding, but I don't ever plan on displaying him like that, so he looks good like this, just with his mask like that. So, yeah, overall articulation is pretty good. Alright, so the issues I have with this figure. There's a lot of them. I even made a list. It's that bad. So, I'll start at the feet again. So, because the feet are the way they are, they're only connected by a ball joint and an axle, and if you tilt the feet too far, it will pull it off the axle. This is a very annoying problem, because if you have a loose ball joint or a loose axle, when you pick it up, the feet can pop right off. When I built the prototype version, and I just built it with any parts I had, the ball joints I used were very loose, and every time I picked him up, both these feet would pop right off. And that's not good, especially when you're trying to pose him. So, yeah. Another thing is, when you twist the ankle, it puts a lot of stress on this calf section. It's all built around this mata foot here, and so everything else is just kind of tacked on. So when you twist the foot, it's putting a lot of stress on the Roxy foot, which is putting stress onto all these connections in here, which aren't very substantial, and then it puts stress on this foot, which puts stress on the knee, which also ties into the next issue. Hey, look, the foot fell off again. What do you know? The knees are not tight enough, or this axle in here is not long enough to support the weight. So after a while, the weight of the figure will force the knees to sag, and it'll actually push these two Bow-Rock rib cages apart, and the figure will slowly sag. And I worry that maybe one day he'll his legs will just pop apart and he'll fall over. So that's another issue. Now, concerning the whole legs, these legs, in terms of ball joint strength, aren't strong enough to hold up the entire figure, because this guy's fairly heavy. So, there's no extra support like you'd see on like 08 Takanuva or Tuma or Toa Matanui. It's all just the ball joints that are there. There's no added support to help him stay up, like no pistons or anything, which is unfortunate and problematic because he can be very top heavy, and those extra supports would have really helped him stay up. So at the stomach area, this stomach section is only pegged in. So between the tubes and the elastic band, the axle is constantly being pulled out, and pushing it back in, is it back in? There it goes. You can actually just watch it pop itself out almost right away, because the elastic band and the tubes are constantly putting pressure on this Anika foot. And that's very problematic. And it also ties up to just under the head, because the elastic band will pull on the Anika foot, which will be pushed out, which will also force this bushing off. And this bushing is very, very small. And so when it goes flying, it kind of disappears. And this is an expensive part, this little white bushing. So this whole front section is very problematic, because if it blows apart, and it's not pretty. So turning to the back, there's a few more issues, mainly these tubes. Oh, and hey, there's another issue which you might have already seen a few times in the video. I gotta grab that piece. Hold up. There it is. Okay, so this back plate does not want to stay on whatsoever, because it's only held in by half of the axle. The other half has a bushing slid on it, and that's connected to this camshaft here. Let me focus on that, because focusing is important. There we go. Now these tubes are just stuffed in there. They are just stuffed in there, and you just kind of gotta hope that they stay in there. So if you get long enough tubes for this guy, you shouldn't have a problem like moving the arms and the tubes not falling out. When I built my prototype, just to build it, I used very shorter tubes that the instructions I went off, which I'll link in the description, said to use shorter tubes, and they would continuously pop out, which is a problem. So I recommend getting longer tubes. I used length 16 on mine, so just so you know. And again, there's that problem with the back plate. And speaking of which, this whole back section and neck assembly is not very well built. Everything is built off of a thin lift arm, and so if this connector piece falls out, this neck piece will fall out, which will result in this falling off again, but also the whole head section will fall off, because that's all connected there. This piece is the only thing stopping this assembly from falling out. And this is only held in by half of an axle, or not a full, it's only held on by like a thin lift arm worth of axle, if you understand what I mean. Only a thin lift arm thick. That I think that's how I should put it. Anyway, so yeah, if this piece falls out, this section falls out. If this section forces itself out somehow, this piece will fall out. And this piece is also expensive. So, yeah, there's a lot of issues on the back. A lot. And also, moving the arms around will push this off. Just moving the arms around will do that. And it's very annoying. Now, same issue with only one of these tubes under the armpit is one is just stuffed in. This top one here is actually connected in the armpit. This bottom one is just stuffed in there, and friction and force is keeping it in there. When that pops out, it blows right out. And it is so infuriating to try and push it back in, which it's infuriating. So, and it also puts stress on this Knights Kingdom piece. So, yeah. The arm is probably the least problematic section. It's more a nitpick, I think. The arm is this Mata foot section is held into this Vaki leg piece via a bull rock tooth, and it just is pushed in there. Now, this is an axle to a peg hole connection, so it will slide. And hey, look, there goes that back piece again. I'm just going to leave it off. And so, if you start messing with the arm a lot, this section can force itself out, which in most positions you can get the arm in. It's not really that problematic. It will slide out after a while, and that's just... the only reason the tooth is there is to fill in the little gap between the back of the foot, which it doesn't really do a good job. So I don't know why a pin with a connector wasn't opted in there. So yeah, that's that. Next we have the head. The head is connected same way as the 03 Teridax. It worked on the 03 Teridax just because of the way the figure was designed, but on this guy, there's a lot more stuff going on around his neck. Like, the 03 Teridax doesn't have all this extra fancy stuff to fill in all these gaps. So moving the head too much will pop the neck right off because there's not enough clearance for everything, which is quite unfortunate. And then it also limits the neck articulation. And also moving the neck moves this whole back section, which I mentioned earlier. And it's a good build, don't get me wrong, and once it's standing, it's quite solid. But if something goes wrong, it seems like the whole thing just crumbles. And honestly, it's very frustrating because I really, really like this figure. It looks amazing. It's just the structure of it is not very good. So it feels like a Jack-in-the-Box. And that's the best way I can put it. It feels like a Jack-in-the-Box. So, oh, hey look, a tube fell out. So, it can happen, which isn't just sad. So, yeah. Melding Teridax is shown to have two weapons. The first of which is his staff, which is very similar to his 2003 version. At the bottom of it, we have a chronicler staff piece, which I believe was first introduced in 2004 in silver, and it makes a nice bottom end to the staff. And then the main handle shaft of the staff is made up of this connector with a pinhole in the middle, as well as two 12 long axles. Where Teridax would hold the staff, there is a black pin axle with a perpendicular connector and a 3 long pin, which allows for Teridax to hold it. I'll show that in a minute. And then at the top, we have a very similar connection to the original 2003 version, where you have this connector connecting the two blade pieces. And these blade pieces are the exact same pieces that were in the 03 Teridax model, the Takanuva model from 2003, the Nadiki model. It's the same piece. And then to top it off, we have this silver Bullrock eye. It kind of fills it out, makes it look nice. So yeah, overall it's a nice weapon. It's very long. I'll measure it when I get to comparisons, because I'll compare it to the other staff. So, and let's bring in Teridax here and focus on him. And he can hold this very easily. All you do is you take the claw here, and I focus too soon. And you just take the pin there and you just plug it in. And then you can hold it, you can orient this however you want, and then you just plug that back in. I find it's easier to connect the claw into the wrist after you've connected the weapon. Makes it a bit easier than finagling it while he's in, while he has his hand connected, because he is kind of fragile. So, yeah, so it looks pretty good. Let's just back up here so you can get the full experience. Yeah, so it's a good weapon. I really like this weapon, though it's not the preferred weapon I like to have him with. In terms of him wielding it, it is very light, so he can pull off any pose that you would want to do with this Teridax. He can two-hand it if you want. So, yeah. Now, something I want to show is how this assembly works, because you can adjust it and tip it side to side. So, it gives you a bit more range of motion in terms of what you want to do. So, yeah, very good design, and it works very well with the figure. It's sized just right, so it looks like it fits with the figure. So, yeah. So let's take that from him, move him to the side, set that over there. So the second weapon that Teridax is shown to have is his Warhammer. And this thing is awesome. It is absolutely awesome, and I love it. So, it has the same basic principle to its design, with a few differences and obviously a different end. So at the bottom, again, we have the chronicler staff piece in silver, if I can focus. There we go. Instead, they opted out to have a shorter ribbed hose and put in these two half bushings. And then coming up, you have the same handle connection, which can rotate and allows the hand to rotate on the pin. And then you move up, same idea as the staff. And then you get to the top, where you have probably noticed that there is this tube that runs all the way down to the chronicler piece. And it's just wrapped around the handle. And then in the middle, it is connected by this frictionless pin. And so it looks very nice. It pulls pulls the look together. And yeah, it's just nice. I like it. Yeah, and then at the top we have the hammerhead, which is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It is made up of mainly axles, connectors, and then the main bulk of it is made up of these jetpack pieces, which were, I believe, introduced in 2008 with the Fantoka line, or the Fantoka sets. And then you got these Galak Call shields at the front, which make up the hammer part of the hammer, the part you hit the hammer with. You know what I'm saying, I hope. Anyway, and then on the bottom here you have Nuva armor, which when all three of these pieces come together, it really pulls off a nice shape. Like, it's an awesome hammer. And it's just beautiful. It just is really beautiful. And I can't go over how nice it looks. So, and then it connects to the handle just by a connector underneath. And that just plugs in like that. So, yeah. Overall, it's very nice. Again, it is very, very long. So, yeah. And, of course... Oh, I dropped him. Teridax can hold it. Just like so. Sometimes this hose here can get in the way of the hand. Usually it moves out of the way, though, because it is rubbery plastic. But, and sometimes it will pop apart and you have to rewind it. It can be a little frustrating, but the look, I think, is worth it. And then you can just attach it there. So, voila. Here we have Teridax. So, once the hammer's added into the mix, there's a new slew of problems, which is kind of most prominent in the elbows and the legs. So, because the hammer is so top heavy, the arm of the figure just can't hold it. And so if the hammer is not supported, this happens. It will just fall. Now, normally, every other time I've filmed this, the elbow has either come off or the hand piece has come off. This is because of how these ball joints are designed. They're designed to also accommodate studs as well as axles. So there's not really enough plastic to hold the axle in securely. And this is on both sides. And so every time the hammer is not supported, it will fall. And that is just... It's so disappointing because this is such an amazing weapon and it just feels so good having him wield it. So Teridax here measures in at approximately 30 centimeters or about 1 foot tall. So he's pretty big, which is a good size for a Bionicle. It's nothing to scoff at. Width-wise, from shoulder to shoulder, it's about 14 centimeters or 5.5 inches. Alright, comparisons. So, here he is with a Toamata, a Toametru, and a Toa Inika. So, he's a good size. He's a Titan. So, he's got to be big. And then we have the Rakshi, 2 different versions of the Rakshi, and they scale fine with them. Like, I don't think it's anything major. Yeah, so there's those two. Now for some Titans, we have Nidiki. So, yeah, Nidiki more takes the height away and goes for width and girth. So, yeah, there's Nidiki. Here he is next to 08 Takanuva. And he's a bit shorter, maybe like 1 or 2 centimeters. Nothing major, but he is shorter, so still hasn't got him beat. So, here he is next to Rudaka. And let's get Sidorak in here, why not? And Sidorak. So, he's about the same size as these two. He's about the same height as Sidorak, but Rudaka's a bit taller just because of her heels. So, yeah. There's that. Move him back over. Oh, he was about to fall. Aha, caught him. Yeah, that's a major problem. He likes to fall over. Okay, Next we have my first It's Canon review, the Teridax. And it's kind of funny to see this massive creature absolutely dwarfed by someone in scale with the rest of the figures. So, I think that's just hilarious. So, yeah. For some in-story comparisons, here he is next to Maku. Here he is next to Mazika and Voltraz. There we go. And finally, the comparison you've probably all been waiting for. O3 Teridax. Wow. What a height difference. It's impressive. It really is. What really amazes me is how the designer took so much inspiration from this model and just improved on it in this model. Like, just quick turnaround. It is impressive how much detail he took from this O3 one and just really translated it into this new guy. Though the stability of this new guy needed some work. Maybe ratcheted hips would have helped. But overall, these two are impressive. How close in design-wise they are in terms of looks. Like, design-wise, they are totally different. This guy's built a lot differently than this guy is. So, yeah, there is the two Teridaxes. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about are the most difficult pieces to get for this model. Now, this is all based on my personal experience buying all these pieces needed to build the model. Now to start, we have a pin and axle connector in white. This color variant originally came out in one set, the Titan set Kreka, released in 2004. It is not only hard to find, but it's also quite expensive to buy individually. You'll need one for this model. Next, we have a white bent pin connector. This color variant originally came out in two sets. Again, the Titan Kreka, as well as a Technic set. This piece is also hard to find and quite expensive. You will need two for this model. Next, we have a white half bush. This originally came out in four sets, none of which are Bionicle sets. This piece is hard to find and is more expensive than its regularly colored counterparts. You'll need two for this model. Now we have a white 3-long axle with a stud on the end. This piece appears in 3 sets, none of which being Bionicle sets. This piece is not too expensive, but is a little more difficult to find. You will need two for this model. Next, we have a white pole reverser. This piece appears in 3 sets, none of which are Bionicle sets. This piece isn't too expensive, but again, it is a little harder to find. You will need 3 for this model. Next, we have a white Technic axle connector. This piece appears in 15 sets, none of which are Bionicle sets. This piece was very common in the early 2000s, but has become a bit of a rarity now and can cost a little more. You will need 1 for this model. Another white pin connector. This piece appears in 10 sets. Yet again, none of these are Bionicle sets. This piece is hard to find and usually has a higher price because it appears in such small quantities within the sets it came with. You will need 1 for this model. The last white piece is a white Technic cam. This piece originally came out in 3 sets, none of which are Bionicle sets. This piece is not too expensive, but is rather difficult to find. You will need 4 for this model. Another piece that was hard to find is this dark tan claw piece. It originally came out in 2 of the Viking sets. This piece is just hard to find and is not usually very expensive. You will need 2 for this model. The black pin axles were very common pieces, and they appeared in 26 different sets, though they can be absurdly expensive. You will need 3 for this model. Next we have a dark gray ball joint with a print on it. This piece only appeared in one set, Jabba's Message. It is rather difficult to find, but it's not usually too expensive. You will need 2 for this model. Next we have a Knights Kingdom 2 2005 shoulder armor piece in pearl dark gold. It came in the Sir Raskus set. This piece again is hard to find, as I was not able to find it anywhere in North America when I bought them. Thankfully they're not that expensive. You will need 2 for this model. Now we have this Metru chest cover in pearl dark gold. It only appears in one set, Licon and Kikanalo. This piece is very expensive and very hard to find. You will need 1 for this model. And finally, we have the pearl dark gold Krakan, only appearing in one Bionicle set, the Tower of Toa. This is easily the most expensive and most difficult piece to find for the whole model due to its size, rarity, and value. I had a heck of a time finding this for myself to purchase. Thankfully, you only need 1 for this model. So, Melding Universe Teridax. Do I recommend him? Yes and no. He is amazing to look at. Absolutely phenomenal. Whatever shelf you put him on, he will drown out basically all the rest of your shelf because he looks so good. Everything is just organic. It looks so organic and like it's supposed to be there. Though that comes with a price because he's very brittle. Like, I don't know how many times this back Metru piece fell off, or the chest popped out, the arms fell off, the ankles fell off, or he tipped over, or he just completely blew apart because of all the stress the tubes are putting on him. He's a real catch-22 set. That's the best way I can describe it. So if you want something to display on your shelf, go for it. He's a little expensive, but he is worth it. If you want something to display or pose and play with, I don't recommend it as highly because he is so brittle. So, yeah, well, that was my review of Melding Universe Teridax. And if you like this review, head on over to my channel and check out some of my other videos where I reviewed the Tatarak, the Ice Shadow Trap, as well as I plan to start reviewing some of the Knights Kingdom 2 sets. So you can stick around for that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what you liked about this video. Let me know if you like this model. Let me know if you have this model. So, yeah. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.